name is K.L. Kettle. A few weeks ago I shared some writing tips with some friends of mine using the tool Scrivener. This was part of something called GEA, Kidlit May, and it was inspired by a question around what tools people use, and a lot of people use Scrivener and a lot of people said they were afraid to use it. I've been using it for a few years and I thought I'd take some time out to share some tips. A bit of a disclaimer, I'm not a guru. I'm a user, which means there are probably better ways to do the things that I do. But I've decided to share the things that I do in the hope that other people, other writers will use this tool and find it as useful as I have. If you've enjoyed this video at any point, please do follow me on at KL Kettle on Twitter or on Facebook. I'll leave the links in the doobly-doo. I'll also put them at the end of the video. You can follow any of the different steps using some of the tags below, so you can just skip to the piece that might be interesting to you. And if you've really enjoyed this, maybe I'll do some more later. Thank you very much for watching.
I think we have everybody here. Hopefully you've got what you need alongside you. We've all started with some introductions and talking about what we're going to achieve, and I'm going to get started. I'm going to start by talking about Scrivener. So I came to Scrivener a couple of years ago. I was a Word user. I've been writing books in Word probably since I was 15. And you would have had to wrench me away from that thing with a crowbar. But what I found that I was struggling with, and this was partly down to technology at the time, was I was struggling to write in one place, have all my editing stuff alongside me, play with things, chop things about. And what I found, which was particularly traumatizing for me, was I would often sort of archive things. So I would be writing whole chapters, whole chunks, and I would say, oh, I don't like this, but I don't want to get rid of it. So I would just do an awful lot of carriage returns, send it to the bottom of the document, or put it in a note file somewhere, and forget about it. And I would sometimes then lose it. And then I think months later, oh, there was something really great I wrote. What was that thing? And it would be gone. It would have just disappeared into the ether. So what pulled me to using Scrivener in the first place was its archiving functionality, and I'll talk a bit about that. And it's very, very simple archiving. It is effectively the same as putting it to the bottom of the document, but it's a little cleverer than that. So it's a tool that's made by writers, and it's therefore evolved very specifically to support writers. It's not, Word was created very much by professionals, business people who wanted a tool that was very much like the software that they were using. A paper and pen. So it's designed to look like a piece of paper on a desktop or on a word processor from the 1990s. It doesn't really suit, in my opinion, the creative mind. And therefore, Scrivener sort of evolved from writers to support the creative process and has been pretty universally adopted by a lot of people. And it's gone through many iterations and many evolutions. I'm going to be using the latest version of Scrivener, which is Scrivener 3.02 specifically, which you can download, and I'll show you where to download it from. I'm working on a MacBook Air, which doesn't have Word or Windows software on it at all, but I'll try and show you Windows on another machine to show you how I bring a Word document in. And it's quite good, in my opinion, for ensuring you have automatic backups. You can't close it without it saving. It enables really good versioning, and I find the compiling piece really useful, as well as being able to move things around in your manuscript really quickly and really easily, archiving things and bringing them back, and simultaneously having all your research and all your notes around you on the same screen. So those are the key things about Scrivener that I think is worth bringing to the fore. I hope that answers most questions that people might have. The first question, which is, where do I start? So this is particularly for those of you who have not downloaded Scrivener and don't know where to get it or how to install it. So here we go to download our free trial. We hit Mac OS download. You can also get it off the Apple Store. Personally, I bought mine off the Apple Store because it combines payments as well at the same time. So you don't have to come back to the site to do a separate licensing purchase. But if we'll download here, I'm not going to install it because I've already got it installed, but you'll see that it downloads. I'm using Chrome to download it, so it downloads in the bottom left-hand corner. I think that's pretty standard for most browsers. And when it does download, it downloads to the desktop and will create instructions for me to drag and drop into the application file on Mac to be able to create. There are instructions, or there should be instructions, on buying older versions or getting older versions, and for also installing on your machines. I'm going to start by opening the tool. So this Word document is currently in full view. And you'll see, if I skip through, I have a contents page. And I've created these contents using the standard header functionality that you have in Word. So I've used for each of the acts and the headings for the acts, I've used header 1. For the chapter titles, I've used header 2. For the body of the text, I have used it just the basic body setting. And I've included an image. And there's actually about 2,500 words of text. It's a very short story. I have a little quote to start with, and then I've created the content using that auto contents tool, which takes the header functionality and creates a contents page. And that, for me, was just to test that I'd set the headings up in the right way. What I want to do is I want to import this into Scrivener, and I want to start playing with it in Scrivener. I'm going to do that now. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create a blank novel format. So you'll see that on the left-hand side of the Scrivener window that you get when you first open, you can have all templates, blank, which is just a blank template, fiction, non-fiction, script writing, and miscellaneous, which includes poems, recipes, etc. I'm going to assume that everybody here is a fiction writer, but you can set something up using a blank template if you want, with the same kind of thinking and the same sort of tools that I'm going to show you. I'm going to select novel, and I'm going to double click. I'm going to give it a title. I'll give it the title of my book. And it's now opening. She says, crossing her fingers. Ta-da! Okay. So it can be a bit overwhelming when you first see it. What we have is a useful document which is highlighted here. You see it in the dark grey, which is telling you all about the novel format. I do recommend you read this. I'm not going to walk through it because it'll spoil some of the stuff that I'm going to teach you. So it also sets up, this is the key area here. I'm going to actually get my little highlighter pen. Where is it? The manuscript, chapter, scene breakdown. There's also a characters section, places, front matter. This is important. We'll get to it later. And very critical for your archiving is actually trash down the bottom. I'm now going to import something. But just so you're clear, this is the setup. Before you import anything, you can use this setup to create your novel if you want to use this from scratch. You can either use each topic at the top page as a chapter and each scene. I actually tend to use these as chapters, this level. So you can create the levels. I'm actually going to delete both of these things because I don't want them. And then I'm going to import. So I go to File, Import. I'm going to be slow in case any of you are following along. And then we're going to scroll down to where it says Import and Split. So using import, you can bring in anything. You can bring in old projects. You can bring in any file, really. But the key functionality for me to highlight is this import and split. I'm going to select my document. The criticality here is split will work best if you're bringing in a Word document that has been split using the header functionality, the header 2, header 3. You can also force a split in your text if you're just using a flat file and it says A, B, C, D, E, and then you have a hash symbol. It will create a new scene, so a new one of those little levels every time you have a hash symbol. Alternatively, you can use what I do, which is the existing outline structure of the document using the header functionality in the Word doc. So I select the first radio button, which is split using the document's outline structure. And I don't select anything else. And then I hit import. And then I watch it do its magic. So it should be churning in the background. You can't see the little wheel, but I can. What it's now doing is it's pulling in the Word document, it's analyzing all those headers, and it's creating a section for each one of those sections in the document. So here you can see we have header 1, act 1. And if I open up the little twisty, which is the arrow to the left of that, you can see I have chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 3, and that was where anything was highlighted as header 3 in the Word document. You can even see the image. So it doesn't just import text. It imports the images that you include in that Word document as well. So if you created a picture book, or if you've created a book that has any sort of content that is in an image format, it will pull those through as well, mostly. I haven't found an instance where it doesn't yet. So what do I mean by play? Well, if I decide that I want to have chapter 2 as chapter 1, I can drag and drop it and move it around within the body of the text. I can delete whole chapters. So perhaps this empty section here, I decide that I don't want. I'm going to hit right click and hit to trash, or I just highlight so it's in blue and I hit this little trash button here. And when I've done that, instead of being deleted entirely, it's just moved down here into a trash file, which is really, for me, very, very important, because it means it's never lost. It's still in its format from when it was replaced, and it's still editable, and I can bring back any text from it at any point in time. So I'm going to bring it back. So I'm going to drag and drop it back to the place that it was. I've decided I actually don't want to get rid of that. Okay, so that for me, I'm just highlighting the import side of things, and how I created just a starting document from that Word document. I'm going to file save it, so I don't lose it, save. And that saves it using the title I gave it. Of course, you can save as, give it another version number, give it a date, save it as multiple different versions. I generally only have one major version of a Scrivener file at any one point in time, because it can create a backup at any point. So I'm going to look at split screens, composition mode, which I find really useful, the hiding bits of Scrivener, so you can just keep a clean space and then bring things back if you need to, using templates, how I do revisions and recommendations, how to use the comments and index card, and just some of the little writing tools and focus things that help you, or help me at least, with my editing. So let's start with splits. So one of the things I'm going to show you is if I go into form view. So I really, really, really love, my favorite thing about it is this little, see this little image here that looks like two columns. If I hit this two columns, it creates a split. This is the same document. Okay. But what I could do is I can change this one, which says 2.1, back to chapter 2. And I can just drag and drop this content back where it was. And then delete this dead one. And when it's got no text in it, you'll see it's got a little white page rather than a page with lines in it, so I can get back to trash. I'll do the same with chapter 1, where I broke chapter 1 up. There we go. So I haven't found a quick way to re-merge splits, but I find that that's a pretty snazzy way to do it without necessarily being able to see the two things at the same time. So you don't necessarily need to bring all the text over. You can, and there's multiple different ways you can play with this split functionality. So with my first chapter, we have here, if I want to, let's say I've got an old version of this. I'm going to create a copy. So I'm going to right click on where it says 1. I'm going to create a duplicate, and I'm going to call this old chapter 1. And now I'm in a situation where I actually don't want this old chapter 1. I'm going to move it to the trash. It's dead. I don't need it. I've rewritten chapter 1. But for some reason, there's something, part of chapter 1 is sitting with me. I think there's that, what was that thing I wrote? I really thought that was quite good, and I want to go and claim that back. Well, rather than scrolling up and scrolling down and trying to dig through old files or trying to, go through old notebooks, I know that I've archived it. I put it in my trash, and I want to see it very quickly. So I'm going to use the split screen view. So when I hit split screen to start with, it always gives you a duplicate of whatever you were just looking at. So if you edit it, you'll see the same thing appear twice. But that's useful if you've got a really long piece of text. Let's say that this particular chapter went on for pages. And I actually wanted to read at the top of the chapter and check at the bottom of the chapter. If this was 2,000 words long, you can use the split screen functionality to do that quite painlessly. But I also have decided I want to go and compare to my old chapter 1. Now, this is my old chapter. It might look the same, but if I edit it, you'll see this is not the same as my live chapter, which is listed here as chapter 1, old chapter 1 here. Now, you may prefer to have your split screen in horizontal rather than vertical. Generally, I like to play around, and sometimes I like it split screen horizontal, sometimes I like it vertical. If I go to view, it's an editor layout, and you have split horizontally and you have split vertically. So you can move it in that way, as you can see. Now, let's say I want to go and check out Act 4, or I want to check out Chapter 17, multiple chapters. You can change the view here. Whichever the master one that you're working in is the one that has the blue highlight at the top. So that allows you to see which one is the one that if you type or if you make changes will be impacted, and you can easily click between the two. I can also use this functionality, this back and forward, to go back, not back to chapter 16 from chapter 17 or to Act 3 from Act 4, but back through the different things you've looked at in order. So if I go back again here, I'll go back to my old chapter 1. So you've just seen me go through the selection. And now if I hit forward, it'll bring me to Act 4 and then chapter 17. If I type some notes here and I add something to my card. So this is the carding. Imagine if you were putting it on a pinboard card, and this is my notes. As I move away from the page, you'll see that this detail changes on the right-hand side. And you'll see also the highlighting on the left-hand side changes as I navigate through as well. One of the other things I find really important is the composition mode. So sometimes this view is just too cluttered, and there's too much going on to really understand how to focus your mind. In the Word Microsoft tool, it's called the focus functionality. In Scrivener, it's called composition mode. Again, if you go to the top, you go to view, and you go to enter composition mode, you'll see that it opens up a dark version of the screen with the text. Very little clutter around it. You can scale the position of the paper. You can scale the size of the paper. You can scale the width. It can be full width. And you can still do things like see your cards, see your notes. You can also go to different places in your manuscript. So let's say we wanted to go to 17, which I just showed you, and you wanted to see the notes, you could do that too. And it also tells you still where you've got spelling mistakes. Obviously, it doesn't know Latin. You can also do searching. And you can take the background to full black. And you can flip it in this way. And you can come out of it either by hitting escape or hitting this button in the bottom right-hand corner. And if you want to keep it in white, you don't want to have it in black, but you still want to fill the screen, and maybe you even want to continue to use your split screen. You can hide the panels on the two sides. There is a button on the left, so you can hide your binder, and there is a button on the right with the eye on it to hide your info panel. This is a view that I find the times that I go into the vertical split screen rather than the horizontal split screen. I'm going to go back to that now. Just having those two documents side by side is really useful. I could be writing my new chapter in the left panel and have my old chapter on the right, or some research notes. So the other things that's really useful for this is you don't actually just have to look at chapters. You can also select. I'm going to go back into here. So if I right-click in the top, this is without me having the binder and the info panel. I can still navigate through the binder, which is the content on the left. If I click here, it just reveals it. It brings it in from the left. And I can decide that actually what I want to use is some research. But I haven't got my research. So I'm going to add something. I'm going to add a web page. So this is the other thing I was talking about at the beginning. It's not just a Word tool. It's not just a creation tool. It's actually a place where you can store all your research. Not in this version, obviously, but in my active manuscript book, I have huge amounts of data, not just things I've created, but web links and images and just info that I find really useful when I'm writing pieces from books, things that inspire me. I'm going to add a web page. Because I've decided that I need a web page to refer to when I'm writing my chapter, and I've decided which web page I'm going to use. So I've chosen this particular website, and I put it in here, address, and I'm going to call this compiling info. So I give it a title, I put the web address in here, and it's adding it into my research section. Do a little churn. You can see it in a note card here. And if I go into this view of the document, these sections up here, you can view the document. You can see it in a card format, or you can see it in an outline format. I'll come back to those in a moment. So again, if I go to Reveal in Binder, you'll see the binder pop out on the left, and you'll see here, compiling info is the document that I've just added. And this is the one that I've decided I want to have in my split screen while I'm writing my chapter. You can copy and paste from those documents, as you can even bring images over from those documents, even if they're online. And this enables me, at least, when I'm working with research, or when I'm creating notes or trying to, say, well, this is a scene that's a bit like that, and I need this image here that inspires the next section of my book. I can put it in there, or I can drag and drop from other parts of my documents. So that's another really powerful way to use the split screen. If I click this button here, so this one with the lines gives me the document. This one with the squares, if I go, this doesn't have any cards in it, but on the at level, it gives me cards for each one. And I can edit, so it defaults to putting the text, but I can edit this and say, well, actually, in here, this is chapter 1. It is my opening image. Create, mood, introduce, can't spell. Yeah, so you can create your little cards. So you can either start with the cards and then work your text in, or you can start with your document and then use it to create the cards if you find that useful. And I find it useful to do it both ways, depending on what stage I am in my edit. And if you don't know what you're going to write, perhaps I decided I do want this chapter created here, but I don't know what's going to happen in it. Instead of putting text in here, I could just put a card, so something dramatic happens here. And then when I go into my card view, you'll see I have that card to remind me to write something really dramatic and exciting just before I go into my Act 2. but I don't know what it is yet, so I'll work it out. And I'll go straight on to Act 2 and just keep writing and put those placeholders in. So and I could put like an exciting picture in there that inspires me, or a link to something. So you can start using each of these different segments around the desktop to pull everything into one visual space. The other thing you can do, as well as view it in view your research, is do things like characters.
You see where it says notes underneath characters at the moment?
Yeah.
So just a minute ago when you was on another card, it had like chapter 1 and then notes. Can you stick to things in the notes?
You can put anything in here. Also, when you compile, you can compile it to pull all the things in if you want, or none of it. So I can put notes here to say, you know, blah, blah, blah. I can put, you can also see there's an image, where's my little thing? Here. So if you go to your editor, if you compile this into a Word document, and you're working with an editor and they like working in Word, and they do lots of comments, you know, where it comes down the side on Word, when you import it, if you import it again, it'll import into this space, and you can use the commenting functionality just like anything else. So I can click on a word, I can add a comment. Where's my add comment? Insert comment, there we go. This is terrible dialogue. Okay, and also you can color coordinate these notes. I'm going to hide the bubbles 1 second because they're in the way of me doing my things. You can, what was one? You can convert to a footnote, which is quite exciting. No, you can do that. When I do this, I highlight, and I have my editor's comments. I highlight them in a particular colour. And then I highlight my responses in another colour, and I can see the dialogue. And when you compile, you can choose to compile with comments or without comments.
Brilliant.
So that's just a little note on commenting. So if you've got a document now which is full of loads of notes, when you pull it in and import it, it will import all the comments as well, as long as it's, you know, they're still in the document. And you can hide them and delete them and go, no, I disagree with your comment on my terrible dialogue. Go away. Delete. The other thing that I find really exciting about these cards, if I switch this one around, you see the little picture here? If I switch that around and I decide I want an image to inspire me, I can drag and drop an image. And it's still there. If I go into the carding view, you'll see it's there. So you can use images as much as you can use words, and you can use both at the same time. So here we have our standard carding view. So I just described to those people handing on the tutorial that there are 3 different ways to see your manuscript, and you can see both at the same time. So you can see it in a document form. Oh, by the way, I've decided I don't like this contents page, so I'm going to delete it. It's trash. You can see it in a manuscript form. You can see it in a carding form. You have to be at the sort of one level up from the manuscript. If I go down to a card that doesn't have a page that doesn't have a card in, it'll default to manuscript view. Go back to card. We have Lisa joining. So you can go back to your card view. You can also see the outline view. So I love this view. So in my outline view, it gives me any notes that we have on the card. I can label this for any reason. You can create labels for whatever reason you like. You can say all the red ones are high tension, or the yellow ones are low tension. You can use them for whatever reason you need. Status is really good for me, so you can give something a to-do, in progress, first draft, and you can filter based upon those. So you can see your outline, you can filter on all the things to do rather than the whole document. You can give it a scene. I'll come back to this when it comes to compile. So how you give it a section type is critical for your compiling. It is not useful, in my opinion, for anything else. So generally, I always set it to NA. And what I'm going to do now is go through everything in this view and set it to NA, and we'll come back to characters and templates in a moment. So I'm going to highlight everything on the left side, like that. Right-click, section type, NA, because I don't like the section types. And then we'll go back to this view. And critically, for everybody, this is where you see targets and total progress. This is something that you can find useful or not useful depending on how you work mentally. To set a target, you can't set it at the act level. You see this bottom section down here. You'll see, keep your eye on the bottom right of the page of the actual manuscript itself. So I'm going to hide the notes file because we don't need it. There it is, down the bottom right. And I'm going to select a scene or chapter. You'll see now there is a small icon that looks like a dartboard, and this is where you set your target. So I'm going to click on this, and I've decided that my first chapter is going to be 1,500 words long. My first chapter is currently only 51 words long, but I found that out by highlighting the text and checking down the bottom. So it is vastly below the target. So maybe I decide I want to revise my target. I click again on this little capture thing here, and I decide that my target is actually only going to be 50 words. Well, you can see now it's turned green because I have actually exceeded my target, and how excited I am about that. If I go back into the outline view now, you'll see that my total progress is shown, and you'll see that my total target words are shown. If you went through and set this for every chapter, you could then see at a glance how you're progressing on your chapters, depending upon the size. I click on that again, and I set my target. In this instance, I want it to be, I'm going to say, 45 words long. You can see that I've exceeded it down here, 52 out of 45 words. And my green bar means that I've exceeded my target. What I could do is I could also say, actually, I want my target to be 60 words, just slightly more. You'll see that it's blue. It's showing slightly less than target. You can set, with these targets, you can set overruns, so you can give yourself a little bit of a warning if you give yourself an overrun, give yourself a minimum target. And you can give yourself notifications, which means as you get closer to the target, it will ping a little message up and say, oh, aren't you good? You're nearly at your target. Please be aware of this. And then, as I was showing, you can also then see this in the outline section when you look at whatever the folder is that contains the scenes. If you click on the document underneath, it will default to your manuscript view. But you can see each section and how long it should be. So if you want to set your document to be an entire length, then you can do that at the act level as well. You can do that at the scene level, but you can't do it over the whole document. So I've tried to find a way where I could set the whole document to be 75,000 words, and then it sort of evenly distribute the targets amongst the sections. It can't do that. At least I've not found a way. So if anybody does find a way, do let me know. I've decided that Mr. Loram here is the character that I want to really think about. I've decided I don't know anything about him, and since he's my protagonist, I should probably take a little time. But everybody knows that sometimes there are lots of useful ways of doing characters, and staring at a blank wall doesn't necessarily always help. Sometimes a character template with questions helps you think about what you want to write about. We're losing one of our guests, so goodbye. I'm going to use a character template, and this is something that comes as standard from the novel template version of Scrivener. So if you'll see down here, you have something called template sheets. There's a little T by it, and it's in the bottom left-hand corner, and it's just part of the binder. So if I open the twisty to give me templates, you'll see it gives me character sketch and setting sketch. I've highlighted this split screen view, and I'm going to choose character sketch. So this just gives me the template. So I've decided that actually some of the things I want to add into my character sketch template are going to be dramatis personae, so whether it's a protagonist or antagonist, etc. I've decided that I want to know their favourite catchphrase, something particularly simple. But I want to create that template in my characters section. So I've slipped to characters, which is just underneath my manuscript. And as you can see, if I move this twisty about, there's nothing there. I'm going to right click and I'm going to add a character. And I'm going to add a template. So if you just add text, you'll just get a blank file. If you add some existing files, a web page, you could link to a particular web page from a document you've already created, or a particular movie star you really like. But I'm going to create a character sketch, and it creates it here using the template exactly as we've just seen with the pieces that I've created. And I'm going to call this is Mr. Lorem Ipsum. And he is my protagonist. And his catchphrase is Lorem Ipsum. It's very, very, very unimaginative. And then you can go through and you can create more information. You can just keep going and filling this up to your heart's content. You can use it to ask questions, to store information that you find is particularly key. You can add images. So I'm going to drag and drop. Actually, I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste. But I've got my image there. So I can now click away. I can either fill that whole screen or I can create another character sketch. I'm going to right click and I'm going to give this the name of my character. And I'm going to create another one, add from template. And this is going to be my baddie. There we go. And this is Mr. Sit. Okay. And he's my antagonist. And his catchphrase is, sit down. Okay. So now as I go through and I start writing my chapters, I can come back and I can refer to my information about my character as I go along. I can check back descriptions. I can talk about their story goal, but it's always there. It's available for me to refer to if I need to. If I want to revise this, the revision functionality in Word is a little bit more powerful because you can go back and you can revert to your comments. But I quite like this version. So I'm going to go into formatting and I'm going to go into revision mode. And I'm going to go into my first revision. So when I go into revision mode, you'll see that this text color now has reverted to red. It's very simple. And I can now go in and I can say, well, actually, I've decided that this is dialogue. And it sounds like something that Mr. Sit would say. And that this is dialogue. So it's separated. As well. And you'll see that the revisions that I've made are now in red. If I decide that I wanted to go into another revision mode, if I go into format, revision mode, my second revision, I've decided actually, no, it's Mr. Ipsum that says this, and it's Mr. Sit that says this. I don't recommend this editing technique. But you can see that I've highlighted my different revisions. I've not used this technology in anger to be able to back out particular revisions, but you can remove certain revisions. You can remove all revisions. It just removes the colour. It doesn't actually back out the revisions you've made. So unlike with Word, where you get quite powerful revisioning technology, where you can back certain things out, there isn't a way I've found you can do it in Scrivener. But I find that just being able to see at a glance by colour what I've added and what I've removed is very powerful. So the joke my husband says where he says it's all red, it's because I'll start with a chapter like this and I'll just rewrite the whole thing bit by bit, chopping and changing, and suddenly I've got an entirely new chapter, which is why sometimes having an archived version of it is very useful. So you can create before you edit, you can create a duplicate, work on the version that you want, and then you can go back and compare the two versions using the split screen and say, actually, I want to bring back the stuff that I've lost, or I want to back out some of the stuff that I've added. So that's the way that I use the revisioning technology. When you compile, you can compile it with the colouring. So you can see a Word version of it, or even a Kindle version of it, although the colour is just a slightly different shade of grey on Kindle, but or at least on the Kindle that I've got, not on a Kindle Fire. But on a Word, you can see the different red, different blue, different yellow revisions when you do it, or not. You can choose not to show the colours. I'm sure there'll be questions about revisions, but we'll come back to them. I've covered comments and index cards a little bit, but I will add them again here. So On the right-hand side under I, on any card you can add notes relating to the card. So you could say, well, chapter 2, this is when I want to introduce my antagonist, and I can make some notes saying this is rubbish. And you'll see that the colour of the note is in whatever revision mode I'm in. So maybe actually I want to be in revision mode 2, because I've and maybe in my second revision I thought this is great. So you can see different colours can associate with different revisions, and that gets translated through to your notes. You can compile with your notes, and you can compile with your comments. So if I wanted to add a comment in here, I go up to the top, I think, predominantly. Insert comment. No, it's not. And you can see those comments by clicking on this comment bar as you go along, or if I go into this view and I click on here, as you go through it'll pop up. And those comments will come through in a compile if you wish it, and if you import with comments, it will import with comments from a Word document as well. The last editing tool that I wanted to talk about, which I really found out about recently and I'm very excited about, is called Focus. Okay, so sometimes you want to see something in your text. You want to see all the adverbs, the nouns. In one instance, the instance that I found, you want to see all the dialogue. It helps you see the Word document, sorry, the manuscript in a different way. And Scrivener, in the latest version, I don't believe this is in the prior versions, version 2 and below, I believe it's only in version 3, has this thing called Focus. So you go into Edit, you go into Writing Tools, and you go into Linguistic Focus. I haven't tried any things like Name Generator and things like this. And you get a little window that pops up. 1 second. Hopefully you can all see that. And at the moment there is no linguistic focus, but I've decided that actually I want to focus on my direct speech. And you'll see that the minute I select that, and this works with single quotes and double quotes, it will highlight anything that comes through as dialogue. It's a good way of finding dialogue that doesn't have closed quotes, which sometimes we do when we are editing. You can use this fader bar to fade in and out the non-focused text. So in this instance, I'm focusing on dialogue, so it's highlighting the dialogue in dark. And as I turn up the fade, you'll see that the rest of the text is fading to grey. So it allows you to see at a glance how much dialogue is on your page, or how many verbs are on your page, or how many adverbs are on your page, how many prepositions. The really powerful, I think, thing is direct speech and adjectives and adverbs. I use it predominantly for this one. Okay, so that's the linguistic focus, which is another little exciting tool that you can have in there. And again, it comes back to that idea that this tool is a tool that's written by writers for writers.
In Word, something I find very helpful when I change a character's name is that I can just replace all of the instances of that name really quickly. Can you do that in Scrivener?
In the same way that you can do it in Word, in the sense that it's still slightly restrictive. So if I highlight, the best way to, you can either do it by scene or you can do it by the whole manuscript. There are different ways to do it without highlighting certain things. You can search for certain words. The way that I do it is pretty clunky, but it works. So I'm going to highlight the whole document like that. So when I highlight the whole document, I use Control-Shift, the same way as you would if you were highlighting a file in a file on your desktop. So I click down, I hold down Shift, and then I click down all the way to the bottom. You can also click individual items using the Command key or the Control key on a Windows machine. So I'm going to highlight the whole document, and I'm going to try and find all the instances of the word ipsum. Let's do it. He's my character. Control F brings up my find window. I'm going to find the word ipsum, and I'm going to search the entire document and then going to replace it. I've decided that my lead character's name is now going to be Bobby, for reasons that I have decided are very important. You can look by case, a diacritics, I don't know what that is, You can look by contains, starts with whole word, ends word, and you can immediately hit replace all. So I'm now going to replace all, and Lauren Bobby is now fighting back, except in my title, because it won't change it on the binder side. It'll just change it in the manuscript. Does that help?
Excellent. No, that's fantastic. Thank you.
And let me see if I can undo. No, I can't. So that is one thing to be aware of. In that instance, I've not been able to undo. So I've now changed my character's name, but I can do it this way. Find, I've decided Bobby is going to be Ipsum. And you'll note, look, because I'm in revision mode, can you see it's in red?
Yeah.
So everywhere I've done that, it's highlighted it. So if you've decided you've changed a name to, let's say you've changed your name of your character from Lorem, and you've got, let's do it this way, Lorem. And I'm going to change this to XXX. You'll see here is a word called Dolorem. This is such a writing thing. And I'm going to replace all. Can you see now it says DoXXX? Because I've forgotten that word that I changed my name to is actually part of a normal word. You can quickly see where you've made that F up and you can fix it. Replace all. So now I've changed it back and it's still highlighted in red. So I'm going to go into compiling. So I've brought in a Word document, or I've created something net new. I have pulled in all my research. I have edited it to Kingdom Come, and I have decided it is ready to go. I'm going to send it out to my best friend to read and tell me it's rubbish. Or I just decided that I want to have a version I can play with in Word, or I want to have a version that I can save as a backup file rather than in the Scrivener file. You can save Scrivener files anywhere as well. So I want to compile it. Compile it means it takes all the pieces and it creates a new document. There's a couple of notes here. By the way, I'll make this presentation available. There are spelling mistakes in my presentation. There are two main ways I compile. I compile either back into Word or I compile into Kindle. I find that the Kindle compiling is best for me because it allows me to read it in a new format. So I generally compile to my Kindle and read on my Kindle. But I'm going to show you both very briefly. So let's go. So here is my document with all my headings. I'm going to delete this because I don't want it. This is I've decided that this one isn't ready. I've decided that the whole manuscript is perfect, but this page, for whatever reason, I've decided I don't want to compile. I don't want it to be in the book, but I want to keep it there just to play with. I've got this random untitled document, so there's a couple of things that aren't perfect, but it's pretty good. So earlier on in the presentation, I talked about the section type. You can set a section type on anything. You can set it literally anything in the document. And in this version of the compile, I'm going to set things as chapters. So firstly, I'm going to fold up all of my acts, and I'm going to select each one, right-click, and change the section type to, I think it's part heading. And then I'm going to open up here, and I'm going to I'm just going to do the first section so that it's pretty straightforward. I'm going to hit this, and I'm going to change it to chapter. Okay, so you'll see now in the outline version, here we have my, each one of these items is called a chapter. You can change it in the outline as well, and you can call it front matter table of contents. And I'm going to now compile it. So I'm going to go to this image here. It looks like a square with a little arrow in it, and I'm going to hit compile. And it's going to bring up a new dialog window. And here you'll see all of my sections highlighted. You'll see the section type is highlighted, and you'll see this tick box along the side. Now, I decided I don't want to compile this, so I'm going to untick this item here because I don't want to compile it. And I'm going to compile as, I'm going to print it. I'm going to click into compile for stock. So back into Word document. I'm pulling my front matter from manuscript format, which you sort of saw me edit, and I'm just going to go with a default format. You can play with any of these. I recommend playing with it to see what it looks like, but I'm just going to go with the default because it's pretty standard. It's going to compile as is from the document. The tags are important. The tags allow you to set your author name, so I've decided that I'm writing under a pen name for this purpose, and I want to set my author name there. I'm happy with my title. I can put loads of information in here, but I'm not going to. I've decided that I don't want any footnotes. I want to include my comments, so you can see them in the Word compile. I'm going to remove my annotations. That's fine. Delete any struck-through text. You can go through here. You can remove text color, so it's all black. You can remove all hyperlinks. Yes. Okay. Now that I'm happy with that, I'm going to hit. Oh, I've lost my front matter. Manuscript format. Okay. I'm now going to hit compile, and we're going to cross our fingers, and we are going to. Version 1. And we're going to hope this works. Okay, so here is my original document. I'm going to go into my compile version 1. And you'll see now we have a bit of a space here. It gives me my word count. It gives me my title and my author name, and that's coming through from the tags I set. It's got my strange actual new title that I probably should fix. And if I scroll through, you'll see that it brings through the information. Now, if I go into view, go back into the edit functionality, you'll see it doesn't bring it through in different page breaks, and it brings through both the title and the number. This is because I set it to a chapter. So it creates an arbitrary title 1, 2, 3. If I scroll down beyond chapter 5, you'll see I no longer have, now this is really critical, so this is a section type. Because I set sections 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 as chapter, it's created a chapter title. Where I haven't done that, it has not created a chapter title. And I prefer, because of this, not to set the section types, because I want to dictate the title of my chapters. That's my preference. And I don't like going through and either editing it so each one of those sections doesn't have a chapter at the top, or playing with it once it gets into Word. So the way to fix this is you don't set it as a chapter title, as a chapter section type, or in each one of the sections you set it as chapter type, but you don't put the title within the body of the manuscript itself. If you put it within the manuscript, you get it duplicated. So that's one of the little functionalities that is worth being really mindful of. That section type thing can be really impactful when you come to compile. But other than that, you can see that it's pretty straightforward. You can see also on the right-hand side of this, I've got a comments section. Let me go to my first comment. Where's my review? Previous. So there's my comment that you saw me add earlier, telling me it's not rubbish. You can respond to this, and if you import it again, it'll import with that comment response. We are now in the Scrivener mode again. I'm going to change this because I don't like to do the chapter headings, and I find that actually setting the status, the section type, actually doesn't help with compiling. If you do, it creates a generic title for you, and I don't like it doing that. So I'm going to go back to NA, which for me is the best setting possible, and I'm going to do it for NA for all of it. What happens when you do this is it basically takes it defaults to the layout that you have in the binder is the layout for your contents. Again, I don't want to compile the thing that says don't compile me. And I'm going to hit compile. It's going to open up my compiling section again. In this top section, I'm going to hit compile to ebook. Now, in order to do this on your own machine, it will ask you to, before you can do this, you'll have to download a piece of software called Kindle Gen. If you look up Kindle Gen download, it will be available to you for free from Amazon, and it's pretty straightforward. You just follow the instructions to load it onto your machine. Once you've done that, the same application applies. You bring in what you want, you select what you don't want, and then you compile. I'm going to take a moment before I do that because this time I definitely do want to add a cover. Where did I put my covers? So in my Finder, I've created myself a cover. Here it is. I've decided that I want to add it into Scrivener. Let's just shrink that a little. And to do that, you add it into the front matter down here. It gives me a standard cover that I don't want to use. But here's my cover I threw together using Adobe Spark. I want to delete that. Here is my cover. And I'm going to compile now. Go back to here, maybe ebook. Do not compile me here. Select my front matter from ebook. Using the default sections, checking here on the detail, and I'm going to hit compile. Now I'm going to change this to Kindle, compile. Does a little bit of magic. Delete. There's my picture. Yes. We have our name. We have our detail at the front. We have our cover. And you can see we've got the odd name that I created using the find and replace for Annalise in my picture. And in this instance, I've compiled it with comments, so you can see how the comment is appearing when you compile it for Kindle with the comments. Again, you can select do not compile with comments to get rid of that.
If you've enjoyed this, I may do others in the future, so do leave requests in the comments or on Twitter at KLKettle. Bye! You're still here? The tutorial's ended. Oh wait, it's the end screen. Look, the stuff. Maybe stuff. Probably stuff.